Welcome to Artist and Critic. I'm Don Gray, and we're continuing our series from the Land of Enchantment, the state of New Mexico, and Santa Fe in particular. And I'm very pleased to have as my guest a complete stranger who I've just met. No, actually it's my wife, the artist Jessie Benton Evans Gray. Even if she wasn't my wife, I would consider her an absolutely marvelous, very original landscape painter, as I'm sure you'll agree once you see some of the work. Jessie, well, I'll tell you, why don't we just start off looking at the slides? I was going to ask you how you felt about New Mexico, but we'll get into that, and we can talk about we just had a show here. And
we just had a show at the Rhine Gallery in Santa Fe, and I love New Mexico. We're both from Arizona, as of course you know, and we've been in New York for 25 years, and we just came back out to the Southwest.
Permanently?
We don't know, do we? But I think we're splitting our time half and half. And I really see a great difference between New Mexico and Arizona, which I was surprised and didn't realize till we came back out. And basically the landscape is quite different. I feel that Arizona's a little more dramatic, New Mexico is a little more somber. But New Mexico has a wonderful clarity of light. It's such a luminosity that I don't see in Arizona, and I always thought that Arizona was the land of skies. And being here in Santa Fe, near the Sangre de Cristos, which are very high, if Santa Fe 7,000 feet, and the Sangre de Cristos must go up above timberline to what, 12,000 feet?
Must be, yeah.
And of course I've exclaimed ever since we came about the weather, because there's always clouds, storms, and everything brewing over the Sangre de Cristos. And I know driving up here, it seemed like we crossed the border of New Mexico, and suddenly the clouds, underbellies, which are shadowed, were all different colors of purple and orange and everything. It was just luminous. That's the main difference I see between the two states. And of course it's wonderful to be in the Southwest, although I love New York too, in the Hudson River Valley.
And actually I think the first picture we're going to look at is from the Hudson River Valley.
This is the Hudson River Valley, where we live, believe it or not, very rurally, 50 miles north of New York City. And this is a 6 by 8 foot painting. I tie my large canvases literally to the side of a van, because no easel will hold them, and loose you're just almost hand glide with them across the landscape. And so I tie my paintings to the van and just paint. And I tried here too. I love clouds. I love light and dark and atmosphere. And I was trying to get the shadows of the clouds upon the land and a feeling of wind and movement. And that's Mount Adam and Eve in the distance.
Romantically clinging to each other
Right.
under that swirling sky. Well,
Right.
You've always loved this painting, and so have I. It seems to typify one very robust aspect of your style and your love of clouds.
I love clouds because on this painting you can see the little wisps of the end are like electrical charges coming off at times. They change and they snap and crackle, so that I almost feel an energy in the clouds that is unmatched anywhere.
Well, why don't we take a look at the next picture, and I might say, I don't know if you'll mind my saying it, but that Pastorelle now resides in a collector's home in Chicago. Some very nice people have that.
It's happily there. This is as you know, we went to the Grand Canyon last summer for rather a tumultuous trip during the monsoon season, so that we were lightninged out of the canyon most of the day. But there were 5 rainbows one morning looking across the canyon, and we watched the storms come from the south to the north, and I tried to capture it in a little painting.
Well, I think you did, and you really get some powerful forms working together, and these pictures, as we'll see, are much more than obviously simple transcriptions of nature. I really think they're almost psychic landscapes, interior revelation of the forces in your psyche at work, and the sky means one thing and the earth one thing, and sunbursts another thing, and rainbows another thing. They're quite forceful.
I do see, as you well know, I see sort of cosmic forces in nature, and I see things symbolically, so that the sun could represent one thing, and dark clouds zooming across another will be coming to a painting which really exemplifies that. But I almost see the landscape, I don't know how to describe it, biblically in a way.
Yeah, you do, very much.
In terms of a mythology, and I think it's from growing up in Arizona. I grew up in the Arizona desert at the foot of a mountain called Camelback Mountain, and it was a mountain shaped like a camel, and on one side was a rock formation that really looked almost chiseled into what they called the praying monk, a monk praying. And there were all sorts of legends about this mountain of, traders coming across the desert, and then with camels with packs on them, and one camel turning into stone. And so I had the good fortune of growing up in a landscape that was sort of anthropomorphic with mythic legends, and then my great-grandmother was a very well-known Southwest landscapist who had resided the first 40 years in Chicago and Europe. She came west, and I grew up painting, and so I naturally, again, had the good fortune of just presuming that nature was there to be transformed into paint, and I think that's had a tremendous influence on me.
No question. Here's another rainbow. What would you say about this? This certainly is
Well, this is one of these
organic.
anthropomorphic things where I saw the clouds almost as cellular objects or fetal shapes, and I just let it all hang out, and I saw the earth sort of in undulation with the clouds.
And people out here will be coming to some New Mexico landscapes soon, but actually, I hate to say it, but I see an elephant there on the left,
Do
too.
you? Well, everyone
Sees their own thing there, I
sees
guess.
animals in
Yeah.
clouds. You read in more novels and every short stories that people lie in the grass and see formations in clouds, and I'm sure that's why I'm attracted to them, as well as their mercurial aspects. I love the changeability of them. And
Yeah. Well, as we move along, here's the first
Rio
New
Grande
Mexico.
Gorge.
Right.
Not much to say about it, really. A friend of mine, Inger Yerby, who's a fellow painter here in Santa Fe, whom I'd also known in New York, we went up to the Rio Grande River, just before it goes into a canyon, and did this painting, and that really was a wonderful day. I love to put the moon in the daytime in paintings. Seems to add a mystical element, and it's usually there in the sky.
There's a wonderful conjunction, too, of the roughness of the cliffs and the solidity of it, and that very ethereal cloud. That cloud is much less, what would I say, usually the clouds are dominating the landscape in a sense.
I wanted them very delicate and to match the moon. I didn't want them to just knock the socks off of this one.
Well,
I felt that the rocks were the main focus here.
Well, they certainly work out that way. Why don't we go on to the next picture? And I should say, too, that your work has been compared to George O'Keeffe's in the sense of an original organic vision of nature.
Yeah, we aren't really actually too similar, but I notice people compare me to Birchfield, too. And most people who paint from nature, I think, just respond to the organic, elemental, primordial shapes, and so of course they're overlappings, not because we're responding to each other as much as that we're responding to the same subject.
Right, the intrinsic rhythms in nature. And speaking of primordial, this...
yes, this is Arizona. A storm was receding. I always paint from life. I just feel that I have to go out and get buffeted around by it all, and that I try to bring the intensity of my feeling into the work. And basically here I have the rain receding in rather a convoluted shape there, folding in on itself, which is the cloud. But I was interested in the cloud patterns on the land and the mountain. And
the shadows?
The
cloud shadows?
The cloud shadows. I love those. They flicker in and out.
You know,
That's a large painting. That's 5 by 7 feet.
when I look at that picture and I look at that cloud on the right, I see this grim old mythological weather god, you know, like some kind of god of the winds who's just all stretch-faced.
He seems to be there, although I tried to
You
eliminate
yeah,
him.
but
in
he
the most
kept coming
obvious
back.
fashion.
I kept watching the progress of the
Yeah.
painting, and he kept coming back. So I think he's meant to be there. Let's see what we have next in terms of the your painting. Now, this to me this epitomizes the cosmic forces that we were talking about.
Yeah, this
earlier.
is where I really do see nature symbolically, and I know where I'm going as far as going out to a location, but I never know exactly what I'm going to paint. I get out there, and then I sort of wait for something wonderful to happen, and it usually does. And I know, and I say, that's it. And I was painting, and the sun was flickering in and out of the clouds, and these jaw-like clouds were coming in, as you see from the right side. And suddenly the sun burst through those dark clouds, and it seemed like there was a war going on, a war of the heavens between the sun and the jaws, and suddenly it was as if it were almost, I really carried it all the way. I made it a battle for the earth, and the sun suddenly...
Sounds like Star Wars or something.
Yeah, it almost was, and the sun suddenly shot this ray down and just hit the earth as if it had won, and I just had that sort of stellar interconnection. And I just went all the way with it. I decided it was perhaps obvious symbolism, but I really wanted to go for it. And I exaggerate, but really nature exaggerates more than anybody could ever do so. And I love the sun, I love light. This is just another one of the sun and the clouds and
Autumn trees.
Autumn trees just haloed, really, because it was rather dark and rather chilly, as I remember.
But you know, this is just a gentler version of Red Sky, the previous paintings. I mean, when we talk about the cosmic elements, I really feel you're using nature so symbolically. It becomes really almost a battle of good and evil, as you're saying, or enlightenment and ignorance or something, you know, the two opposing forces.
It's the same location, those two paintings, just on different days. And then the one with the red sky, I exaggerated the curve of the earth to almost make it more planetary. I do that at times. And but I love that location, and many of my paintings are done there, and it's such a different mood at different times that it doesn't seem like the same place.
Well, why don't we just continue then with this graphic journey through Jessie's landscape vision and her psyche, and as you look at her on the screen, who would ever imagine that inside this very attractive woman are all these forces
these monsters.
No, no, they're not monsters. They're just all the psychic forces that very much intensified that we all have, and you just have I think, a very unique ability to express them, and you know, with great forcefulness. I mean, well, you know, here they come, one after the other.
This I call it wasn't, but the trees. I tried to get the diagonal trees against the rays, and looks like it's splitting apart. I call it earthquake, but it really wasn't. I just, again, exaggerated a little. And I love the sun when it eats away, it's shining through trees, and it eats away tree trunks or leaves or whatever it's shining through. And that's basically, this is a very abstract painting. It's really about diagonals and angles.
Look at the little face that's been revealed in that there. I mean, I hadn't seen it before, but is it sort of in the welter of strokes?
Well, I just did it in one quick morning, and it's more a paint sketch than a major painting, and yet I feel that I got what I wanted to in it, just in terms of opposite angles, the rays of the sun and the trees.
But you're talking about it almost as if you just went out there and that's what you saw and that's what you did.
Well, that's what I did see.
I know you did.
I waited until the sun got just the right place, and I said, that is it.
I know you did, but it probes so powerfully into symbolic forces and moral forces that it's what you said and what you did and so much more, just because you bring so much to it. I would say this whether you were my wife or not, but you're considered one of the major. I consider you one of the major landscape and painters and artists of our time, and your vision is so totally original and powerful. I don't know if we. Let me just ask you on air. Someone just recently said that you were one of considered.
No,
You
I
don't
don't
want to talk
go
about
into that.
that. All right.
No, I got a rave review from someone, but I don't want to use it until I have their permission.
Okay.
The painting that was just up is actually the same place again as the, or
This is a
almost the
pastel.
same place. This is a pastel of the one of the sun through the clouds and the red sky painting. It's a little different angle. And again, it's just a pastel sketch, but I love the sun. And I almost began seeing, you see the turquoise blue shape, I almost began seeing clouds as this, I saw a reverse. Usually you see clouds as objects upon a blue sky, but I saw so many clouds that I almost saw the little strips of blue in between the clouds as the objects, and the sky, the clouds as the background.
Yeah, it's beautifully done, and again, it's
I seem to be making little squiggles in the shapes of angel wings. I don't know what that means exactly, but they're flying off the side.
well, we'll let them continue on their journey. I'm sure that
I don't really do it that consciously, but unconsciously I know I'm always making one thing into another.
Well, it's just a question of fertile imagination and artistic necessity. As we'll continue to see in this picture of Sedona.
This is Sedona, Arizona, and there are those wings again. This purple cloud, they've become almost bat wings flying along in that one, and then the sun, I don't know what that is, it could be the head. But basically, this red rock country in Arizona is just what you'd call fantastic in the fantasy and fantastic sense of the word, and I tried to put that sunlight on it just because to illuminate the magic of the place. And I liked it with that sort of curve of the valley in there, which is more prominent actually in the painting.
The rocks are so organic. That's one of the things you almost feel like you're in Egypt sometimes, where the forms turn into figures, and
Sedona,
it's just amazing.
We put in a plug for New Mexico, everybody. If you go to Arizona, go to Sedona. It is just magic land, and you'll never forget it. It's like being inside of a miniature Grand Canyon. It's wonderful. It's really been a great privilege to be going around to all of these places painting, although I must say in this painting it was 100 degrees and boiling hot, and I almost burned up, and
Was that one of those days where you were looking at the sun?
Yeah, it was one of those days, and
I
I just take gallon jugs of water and pour them over myself, and when my clothes were totally wet, I sort of got a primitive air cooling system going, and I could stand to continue painting. So
that's Arizona air conditioning.
That's Arizona for you, especially in June.
Let's see what we have coming up next. This is completely different.
This is a large. This is 5 by 7 feet. And basically, I just love the reflections. This is southern Arizona, which is very green in late July and August because they get these, what they call monsoons. They're just terrific rainstorms coming out of Mexico. And of course, this was no storm. It was the aftermath when the clouds were clearing off. And I just really, it's just basically, I love the reflection. And that's what I was going for, and I love the sweep of it all. That mesa is sort of nestled amongst a lot of pointy little peaks and rather dominant in the landscape. And I tried to make the clouds not at all threatening, but rather light and airy and in a way angelic. That's the way they were then. They were very non-threatening.
Certain electricity at the ends.
The way they always do. The wind's usually blowing up there where the clouds end, and so they're little tassels are blowing in one direction. And that's a good way to know the wind direction up there, but of course it can be totally different down where you are. I really am attracted to clouds. I just love their I love their movement and their light. They amaze me, and I never get tired of looking at them.
As we move on to other pictures, I'll ask a question that would apply to this and others. Do you feel the clouds sort of offer you a release from the earth in a sense? I mean, is it the fact that they're not earthly too that has something to do with it, or is that too hard a question to?
It probably is there, although I don't consciously think of it. I'm more attracted to them than the earth, but I think it's because of their forms. And what I also love is when the earth forms, the undulations and the twists of the earth forms are repeated in the cloud forms, and so you really have a layering of similar forms.
Like downburst here, in a way? I mean, is that
yeah,
say something
sure.
of what
The clouds are just sort of
like mountains
layered
in a way.
mountains, the way the mountains are, and again the way the trees are below it. The one thing you get in the West that you don't get in the East, and I must say the Hudson River Valley has beautiful storms, but they don't get the bleeding of the clouds from underneath, where they just pour down their underbellies onto the land. And if the sun hits, of course, it's a white rain coming down, and then if it doesn't hit, then it's a darkness. And I just love that. And I love the West too, because the skies are so big that you can have 3 separate storms going on at different parts of the sky at once, and then somewhere else the sun is shining and there's bright blue sky, so you have all these dramatics going on, and you can take your pick. I keep wishing I had a circular canvas, and I'm sure a lot of artists do, and you could just wrap it around and get the whole effect.
Yeah,
you keep
diorama.
wanting to do these huge panoramas that curve because the sky is, and you can't do it quite on a flat canvas.
Now tell me about this one. This is a wild creation.
This
here.
I had done the other little downburst, and then I just knocked this thing out in a couple of hours. There was a huge thunderhead, and I saw it as wings in a way, and the sunset was the sun was hitting it from across, so there was an afterglow that made this light up over the Sangre de Cristos, and I just went for it as far as just having it a huge sunlit thunderhead pouring down it seemed to have all sorts of little compartmentalizations inside of itself. It's so that it was quite a unique cloud in many ways. They have things called Anvil Clouds here, where they seem to blow their tops.
Yeah.
And
Well, this one
and
certainly
they
blew its
spray
top.
up in the shape of an anvil. This wasn't quite
No,
doing it,
no, it's
but
not,
it was beginning to.
Yeah. Well, the last 2 pictures, and like with the sun rays from Red Sky and several others, it really seems like you're trying to connect the earth with the sky. You know, I mean, the rain is really a connector between the heavenly
Well,
and the
they are
and the
all
earthly.
one
and
unit, and the shapes are the same, and of course they're all nature.
Yeah.
I
right.
think I love nature, and that's why I love to paint nature. It's just an excuse to be out in it. And
Exactly.
still be theoretically working.
Yeah, justify the pleasure of just being out there. I'm not really enjoying this. I'm just painting. I'm working out here.
Sometimes you really are working too. You just do
sure.
anything to get in. I just force myself at times, and I wait for the sun to go down, and I say, yippee, I can quit. And other times I watch it and I think, oh no, it's going too fast. I want to keep working.
Exactly.
So the basic thing is to keep working anyway, and finally get something. This was actually up in Maine. This was a painting I did about 6 years ago, and it was when I first broke through a more, I'd call it a conventional frame of reference, and the sky was just clearing after a terrific storm. I had a piece of masonite which I was painting on the beach, and pebbles were literally rolling across it because the wind was blowing so fast that it was just blowing the whole beach apart, and I was really quite happy with it. The sun had one of those little frost rainbows around it. I must say I always go out no matter what, and I like to paint out in nature because it gives me unexpected surprises, and my paintings go in directions I had never planned, and I just feel like it's the beginning. Yes?
I know we only have 2 minutes, and I know that you wanted specifically to talk about double rainbow.
Yes,
so
yes.
if we can look at that, I hated to interrupt you,
No,
but
that's
I,
all right.
I knew you
No, this will
wanted
exemplify
to.
it. I just
Maybe you can talk about it, and it will be put up.
Well, I've always said that I like to paint outside because it's a difference between, say, if you were standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon or anywhere and you were looking at it with all that space and feeling it and hearing sounds, or looking at a postcard and painting from that. I mean, which is going to give you the more direct experience? And I try to get all that feeling into my work. This painting is, I guess, my favorite. It's 6 by 8 feet, and I went out waiting for something to happen, and this huge rainbow came, and I was really thrilled with what I let it just carry me, and what I like the best is the huge composition of the rainbow creating an arc on the top, and the white cloud coming from underneath to create an arc like an I shape almost, an EYE shape, and then inside was echoed that shape in that little blue patch of sky. And I made the road just zoom toward that patch, almost going down to an infinity point, and all the trees were just blowing and blowing, and I had them all slant. I don't know, that satisfied my soul at that time, and there it was, just happening for me out in the pasture. And I didn't, where I least expected it.
Well, it's an amazing painting, and that one, as well as several others, are residing with various collectors, and I think they're very wise to have picked them up. But
Yeah.
Your contemporary Bierstadt or Turner, if you will, and program has been Artist and Critic. I've been talking with my wife, the painter Jessie Benton Evans Gray, on location in Santa Fe, New Mexico. My name's Don Gray. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.